Hey YouTube, what's up? Welcome back to another WildRift video. We are back with some content as promised in the last stream, and I'm trying to be more consistent. It's a lot busy out there, but I'll try to share my thoughts on the current patch. I really hope they don't bring out another patch in the next few days, because that would be pretty awkward, because I'm also doing a tier list. But knowing WildRift and their balancing team, it's very likely that only a few things will change in the next patch. It will only have a minimal impact on the meta. So let's take a good look. New Fake and the Shy collaboration. We're happy to share that we'll be releasing Fake and the Shy collaboration skins. Keep an eye out on our channels for more information in the future. Champion changes. This patch we're bringing a mix of buffs and nerfs across with the Rift. We are making Gwen's late game snips hit harder, bulking up Urgot and Malphite so they're tankier for those early game skirmishes, and making Aurelion Sol's cosmic power even flashier. That's not all though, we are also shaping up Zed so he has a smoother path to scale. We're also trimming Warwick's claws to keep him more in line with other junglers. And last but not least, we're also making Zoe a little less sparkly, and while also giving Victor a recommended reboot to help you beam your way to victory. Okay, first off, we have Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn skip and slash sees an increase in the enhanced attack damage from 10 to 15% to 10 to 18% ability power. So did Gwen realistically need a buff? Hell no, absolutely not. Gwen did not need a buff. This champion was underplayed, and this is most likely a way of making this champion more popular. This champion was very good already because you have access to defensive boots with this champion without lowering your damage too much. So yeah, this is some crazy change to see, because nobody likes when Gwen is meta, because Gwen is immune. And she wasn't even bad before, she was really good. In the right places, that is. Okay, Urgot. Corrosive Charge, the base damage is seeing an increase from 25 to 40. This damage is the same on the highest level, so it's just an increase in the early game. And the Purge damage is seeing an increase from 6 to 10, as well as an increase. No, there's no increase on the overall damage here, so these changes don't matter much. The reason is the following. Urgot as a champion is highly conditional, and the problem for this champion is actually reaching other champions. So yes, he might be stat checking you, but if you don't engage with him, there's not much he can do. Because he simply can't reach you. He'll also never get tank enough, because if he goes for the full tank build, he will not deal enough damage to be good enough. He also loses into basically any meta top laner anyway. Malphite. This is one of the craziest changes I've seen in a long time. Malphite, a champion who is designed to be very powerful into auto attackers of physical damage. So what is the problem with this kind of a champion? You give him base stats and he starts winning matchups he's not supposed to win, and they're giving him 6 base 80 as well as 10 base damage on his ground slam, as well as even more attack speed lowering with the third ability. So this champion has become even stronger in the spaces he was already in, plus in spaces he was not as strong as before, he can now be picked into. The secret way here for Malphite to function even better is starting with your second ability, the W. And then you have an auto attack W auto attack, which is instant 3 auto attacks that deal so much damage and are even more powerful now thanks to the base attack damage changes. So yeah, this is definitely a change you have to have on your radar, because it made Malphite so much better. And Malphite as a champion almost always has some value thanks to his ultimate ability, compared to like Urgot, which is way harder to find actual situations in which you can deal damage. Okay, Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol mana cost is seeing a reduction to 80 across all ranks on his second ability, and the bonus damage while flying is seeing a 5% increase of the first ability, and every champion trapped within the Black Hole's range gained 1 stack, gained 2 stacks, so they accelerated his scaling a little bit, while also granting him more damage. When it comes to Asol has problems dealing with champions like Pyke, champions that jump on top of him like Zed, Aurora, Annie. All these champions that get too close to him are a problem. Like typical mages, like normal long range mages, are not that much of a problem because he can just not interact with them, but all the other mages that just jump onto him and one-shot him can turn into a real problem. This doesn't necessarily fix the problem Aurelion Sol would suffer from, but yeah, I'm not a fan of buffing Asol, simply for the fact that if a good played Asol is in the game, and the game isn't completely doomed, he has the ability to stall the game for such a huge amount that if the enemy isn't cooperating entirely and understands what to do, it becomes very impossible to close out the game. Simply for the fact that Asol can just place down his E and keep minions locked, as well as the problem around objectives where the Asol pops down the E on the objective itself as well as the ult, and then because both of these spells are so huge that the enemy is stuck inside of all of them and they take way too much damage and most likely end up dying. So it's a really, really scary champion in good games for him. But on the other hand, we have Aurora still running rampant without a nerf again, so I guess it's fine to buff that guy. It's not that impactful compared to, for example, buffing the stacks on minion kills. That would be crazy. Okay, Zed. Zed base stats 35 armor to 40, base resistance 38 to 40, and the damage dealt to other enemies in the path is seeing an increase from 4266 to 4977. This buff is primarily meant for laning Zed since we see these resistance changes. But funny enough, this will most likely benefit jungle Zed a lot more. Simply for the fact that Zed in jungle is 10 times better than Zed in lane, because he doesn't have to play into other champions. He's simply focused on his own clear, gets way more gold income without any hassle, and scales way better from that position, thinking about his assassin kit. Warwick, Jaws of the Beast, bonus damage from 130 to 120% attack damage. I think it's a fine change. Warwick does a lot of damage. He's crazy strong when you know what to do. Unironically, this will confuse a lot of people. Warwick has one of the highest skill ceilings in the game, but also a very low floor. What do I mean by this? During fights, Warwick has a lot of choices how to utilize his third ability, how he wants to chain it with the ult, how he wants to use minions or monsters, primarily minions as a reset tool for his first ability to heal up. So he basically Qs a minion, the minion dies, the Warwick gets 50% cooldown back on the first ability, but since Q does bonus damage to minions, he would also heal more and therefore have a higher chance of winning fights simply for the fact that he's utilizing these environmental factors for his benefit. Also something is the usage of his second ability, how you approach playing around the map, etc. So from my perspective, I think it's a good approach nerfing this champion. Alternatively, if there's something else you could look at to nerf this champion is... I wonder if there's anything that could be done, because this champion is a stat check champion, so you'd have, like, the problem with stat check champions is they just run over you or they're useless. So it's feast or famine. Luckily, Warwick as a champion has a tool with ult that makes it at least he can be somewhat useful by just ulting in and CCing people because it can't get cleansed. Oh, my cat got a toy and she has to tell me. Cute. He can jump in, and since you can't QSS his ult unless you do it preemptively, he always has some kind of value. But yeah, if he doesn't have gold, he's goddamn useless in terms of damage. Honestly, they could probably maybe look at the identity of his auto attacks and shift more power back to the Q here and rather look at auto attacks. But yeah, I don't think Warwick is necessarily too much of a problem. He's also severely underplayed, so there's not much of Warwick you will see. Nocturne. Nocturne sees a base damage now from 58 to 54. That's kind of a huge change for this champion. That actually, like, if this champion was like S tier before, this is basically getting him closer to the A tier. However, the benefit of this champion, of turning off the lights, is still super powerful. So if you're in a coordinated environment and can utilize this darkness really well and know what to do, like for example, like imagine this is the circle you're playing in that you have vision on, but somebody's here and hits you from there. So the entirety of the time of Nocturne ult, you would be hit from out of your range or engaged on from out of your range and you can't react to it, and then you would just be losing in that one. So yeah, I guess this is primarily aimed at trying to lower the one-shot Nocturne build, where he just jumps into a squishy well fed through jungle gold income, and just trying to make him snowball less gold income due to slower clear, etc, etc. But Nocturne already struggled when it came to pure 1v1s against meta champions because they just run over him. Like, he really doesn't have much that he straight up wins. He is more of a map champion than a 1v1 champion. at least against junglers or bruisers. Zoe. Zoe. Base attack damage is nerfed from 58 to 54. Passive from 16 to 9, but that's only a level thing. Spell Thief, the base damage from 25 to 20, which is a 5 decrease. So all of these changes are very, very good. These changes primarily hit the very early game of Zoe. Zoe, from the very start of the game, is very, very dominant as a champion, damage-wise, like super dominant. Having this lowered helps people gain more breathing room without limiting Zoe after her first back, because the thing is still the same. Like, the moment you hit the point where Zoe was base and has access to all her base abilities, and you get hit by a sleep, you still lose the majority of your HP. She didn't one-shot you before these changes at this point. She won't one-shot you after this, of course. But you still have to go base, because if it happens a second time, you will die. So theoretically speaking, if I'm not mistaken, this is primarily a change that affects pre-boots. Oh, my cat is meowing again. Pre-boots. And after boots, it will not be as impactful as you think it is, because these damage numbers really, like, you see it's just a scaling thing here. And as for this, it's just 5 base damage, which doesn't really matter. And here it's 4 base AD, and at some point you will just not auto-attack as much. So this is a pre-boots change from my perspective, and after boots, or at least first item, the changes will not be as significant. But it will obviously impact the way you might be able to cheese out kills super early game pre-boots. So this is something you have to keep in mind. So this is basically an attempt to most likely mitigate Zoe's snowball potential. Because they probably have seen that Zoe gets way too many kills early on, so they want to just stop this from happening too frequently. So this is their approach. That is what I assume. This doesn't kill Zoe, it makes her significantly harder to squeeze out early advantages due to lack of damage, which is then immediately, like, it doesn't matter anymore once we are after the boots phase. That's my assumption. Victor. Recommended skill order, this is something okay. Is this... I guess this is for level 1, 2, 3. Main 1 first and 2, main 2 first and 1. Okay, buddy. So basically, like, I don't know what they're trying to say here, but in a matchup where you can consistently walk up early game, you start with Q level 1. In a matchup where you can't, you start with E. In a matchup where you can consistently Q, you would go Lichbane. If it's impossible, you would go Ludens as your first item. So this is like the logic behind. So yeah. Gameplay changes, Yordle Liandry. We've adjusted the damage of Liandry's trauma so that it will scale better into the late to mid game when dealing with tankier foes, while also slightly reducing its early game damage. 0.6 to 2% to 0.3 to 2.75. This is getting closer to the old Liandry value, by the way, this year. Because I think around, was it 600 AP where you got around 3%-ish percent with the old Liandry? I think it was 3.5 at that stage, because it was 0.5 per 100, I think, maybe. And then we have the burn damage change here. Okay, so this mostly impacts champions that first item this. Like Teemo, who else? Teemo, Singed. Who else has a damage over time effect that's really good with Liandry that I just can't think of right now? But yeah, it's champions that would first item this due to their kits. The item is still a valid item, a good item, just again, for champions that utilize this very well, they gotten weaker since this item got weaker. But late game, you would still pick up this item because it's the best in slot. Damage item into higher health. Radiant Virtue. Since we released Radiant Virtue, we've seen that it has been offering too much defensive power and has been overly dominant. We're reducing the bonus maximum health it grants so it still provides strong team healing without making you excessively tanky. Self increase from 12.5 to 10%. So again, this item would, like, if you have your core item here, like let's say your core item is Zeke's or the Diddy Trap or Hasil or whatever, then Radiant Virtue would, or Protect as well, then this would be probably a second item choice. So making this a little bit weaker again doesn't destroy the purpose of the item. It just makes you a little bit weaker, because that's their goal. It's not to just completely kill the item, it's just to make you weaker. To just not be overbearing, as they say. I think it's a good approach to looking at this item, but the item had most value on champions with a lot of HP, which usually is tied to, for example, heartsteel users. Like, let's say you're a top lane champion and you're Scion, and then you might be Poppy, or anything that builds Hearthstone and just wants to fight, and get an insanely high HP pool, then this item could be very, very potent due to the healing properties it offered to the entire team. However, this wasn't changed, just the self increase was changed. So again, the champions that built this, you know, were already tanky. So they're less tanky, but they're still tanky, if you know what I mean. It really doesn't change too much about the game itself. And rune changes. We've toned down several keystone runes that have been overperforming this patch, reducing the overall damage output. Lethal tempo. Damage attack speed increased per stack from 10 to 18 to 8 to 16. That's for melee, and range from 4 to 13 to 3 to 12. So yeah, they are nerfing this. We are nerfing Arcane Comet 23 to 100, 18 to 95, and First Strike 8 to 7. This looks like they just want to funnel people into taking Dark Harvest more often, or other options of runes. Exactly the same here. You will see many Chinese people, many Chinese gameplays now from people that just will go to Conqueror on 80k rather than Lethal Tempo, even though that doesn't really, you know, it's such a bait unless the game is already good for Conqueror. And the other changes here, First Strike, something for example for jungle that can be said. This 1% could basically incentivize people to test out Dark Harvest more often, so Riot gets more data on the actual balancing on Dark Harvest, and the same would apply to Comet. Still, Arcane Comet would be best for poke mages still, unless you, for example, Ziggs, you would still utilize First Strike, because, well, you just get more money, and hyper accelerated scaling, and it's way more consistent. And as for jungles, you still have to make the argument what is better, the gold income or raw stats. And Dark Harvest only really helps you if you're already winning, or on certain champions that are by default winning and can capitalize on the benefits of Dark Harvest. Like for example, Heimerdinger is capable of benefiting from Dark Harvest simply due to how he functions. Like push, wave clear, and then during a team fight he has his turrets placed down, and then if he gets a kill then the Dark Harvest resets, etc. Like these kind of things. What do we have here? Fix the bug where Zoe's Spell Thief could drop enchantment abilities from removed items. Radiant Virtue currently appeared under the magic resistance category. Fix the bug where Zoe's ultimate execution cost incorrect. Data trading from X and Aiken is Rune. That would be interesting, because is it the same as the other execute bugs? Kane healing. Okay, this is all Axiom Aikenist stuff. Really? Fix the bug where there was a bug like this in the game. Really? That's interesting. That's really interesting. And yeah, we have ARAM changes, so feel free to take a look at them. And yeah, that's it. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more.